Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we are stepping into the astonishing story of medicine and how it shaped us. This is a story formed by curiosity, fear, hope, and astonishing moments of insight. It is the story of how humans have tried to understand the body, to ease pain, to delay death, and to care for one another across thousands of years. Medicine is not a straight line of progress. It is a winding path filled with bold guesses, hard lessons, accidental discoveries, and ideas that changed the world in ways no one expected. It has been shaped by war and peace, by religion and science, by tradition and rebellion. Along the way, it has transformed how we live, how long we live, and how we think about illness, health, and the fragile balance between them. As we travel through this history, you may find yourself amazed by how much was learned through trial and error. You may also notice how often compassion and curiosity pushed medicine forward when certainty was nowhere to be found. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing you need to do except settle in. Let your body soften. Allow your breathing to slow. And let your thoughts drift as we explore this remarkable human story together. Let's begin. Childbirth became safer when doctors finally washed their hands. In the 19th century, maternity wards could be lethal. Women who delivered in hospitals sometimes died from puerperal fever at terrifying rates, while women giving birth at home often survived. A Hungarian doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis noticed a clue. Physicians moved from autopsies to the delivery room, and their patients died more often than those attended by midwives. He suspected something was being carried on hands. His solution was simple and radical. He required hand washing with a chlorine solution before examining patients. Death rates fell sharply. Yet many colleagues resisted, partly from pride and partly because the idea of invisible contamination felt insulting. Semmelweis struggled, and his insight was dismissed during his lifetime. Later, as infection science advanced, his findings looked obvious in hindsight. They were not obvious then. This story matters because it shows how medicine can be held back by human ego, even when evidence is right in front of it. Barbers also provided the service of pulling teeth and amputating limbs between haircuts. In many towns, the person with the sharpest blades was not a physician. It was the barber. Barbers already owned razors, they already knew how to steady a hand, and they already handled blood from shaving nicks. Over time, that practical reality turned into a job description. A barber surgeon might lance an abscess, set a broken bone, or remove a rotting tooth with tools that look more like carpentry than medicine. Pain was expected, and speed mattered, so reputation traveled quickly. You can still see their legacy in the red and white barber pole. It is often linked to blood and bandages, and it hints at a world where surgery happened in public view. The partnership between barber and surgeon eventually split as universities professionalized medicine. Yet for centuries, everyday people met surgery in the most ordinary place imaginable. They sat in a chair, and they hoped the hands behind them were steady. Germ theory rewrote medicine, and it rewrote everyday life too. When illness was blamed on bad air or weak nerves, prevention stayed vague. Then microscopes, lab cultures, and careful experiments built a new picture. Tiny living agents could invade, multiply, and spread from body to body. That idea reshaped hospitals, yet it also reached into kitchens, dairies, and city streets. It changed how food was handled, how wounds were covered, and why clean water mattered. It also gave public health a clear enemy, which made tracking outbreaks feel less like superstition and more like detective work. Pasteur showed that microbes could sour wine and spoil milk, which led to methods that reduced contamination. Suddenly, soap, heat, and sealed containers were not fussy habits. They were barriers. Germ theory did not just explain sickness. It offered a new kind of power, the power to interrupt a chain of transmission before it reached you. Antibiotics arrived like magic, then resistance began its quiet counterattack. When the first antibiotic drugs spread through hospitals, they seemed to bend reality. Infections that once killed in days began to retreat after a short course of pills or injections. Pneumonia, wound infections, and blood poisoning became treatable in ways earlier doctors could hardly imagine. Yet bacteria are fast learners because evolution never sleeps. When exposed to a drug, the rare microbes with protective mutations survive and multiply. Over time, the medicine that once worked perfectly begins to fail. Resistance can travel too. Bacteria swap genes like notes, sharing tools that break down antibiotics or pump them out. The story becomes a race between new drugs and new defenses. That is why stewardship matters. Using antibiotics only when needed, finishing prescribed courses, and preventing infection through hygiene all reduce the chances that resistant strains gain ground. The miracle still exists. It simply demands care. Anesthesia turns surgery from terror into something calmly survivable. For most of history, surgery meant speed. A good surgeon was praised for finishing before a patient fainted from pain. People were held down. Alcohol and herbal mixtures dulled the edge, but could not erase agony. Then, inhaled anesthetics changed everything. In the mid-19th century, ether demonstrations showed that a person could lie still through cutting, with no memory afterward. Soon, surgeons could slow down and be precise, which made complex operations possible. Anesthesia also changed who agreed to surgery at all. Procedures once avoided until the last moment became thinkable earlier, when outcomes were better. It created new responsibilities too. Someone had to watch breathing, pulse, and depth of unconsciousness every second. Out of that need grew anesthesia as its own craft, where calm attention became as life-saving as the scalpel. Smallpox vaccination began with a milkmaid's legend and a bold test. In rural England, people noticed something odd. Milkmaids who caught cowpox often seemed protected from the deadly pockmarked disease that haunted cities. Edward Jenner took that folk observation seriously. He collected material from a cowpox sore and introduced it into the skin of a young boy. Later, he exposed the boy to smallpox to see if protection held. By modern standards, the ethics are unsettling. The risk was real. Yet the result pointed to a new strategy. Use a related, less dangerous infection to train the immune system. The word vaccine comes from the Latin for cow, and that origin is a reminder that major medical revolutions can begin in barns and dairies. Vaccination spread unevenly at first. It met fear, religious objections, and practical challenges of supply. Still, it offered something medicine rarely had before. It offered prevention that could be planned. It also proved that observation plus courage can outpace despair. Trepanation, driving skulls, was practiced thousands of years before modern surgery. Across continents and eras, people cut careful openings into living skulls using stone, bronze, and iron tools. Archaeologists can often tell it was done on purpose because the holes are neat and shaped with repeated scraping, not shattered by trauma. Even more startling, many skulls show rounded, healed edges, which means the person lived long enough for bone to regrow. Why do it at all? Sometimes it followed head injuries, where swelling and pressure can kill. Sometimes it was meant to treat seizures, headaches, or troubling changes in mood. In some cultures, the removed piece of bone may even have been kept as a charm. However you interpret it, trepanation shows early healers experimenting directly with the brain's protective shell, guided by observation and daring. Florence Nightingale used statistics to prove cleanliness saves lives. She arrived to war hospitals and found filth, crowding, and chaos, but killed as reliably as bullets. Instead of accepting it as fate, she measured it. She tracked deaths, causes, and living conditions, and she compared what changed when basics improved. Ventilation, fresh bedding, laundry, clean water, and organized kitchens were not glamorous. They were life-saving. Nightingale then did something even more powerful. She turned those numbers into clear visuals that leaders could not ignore. Her charts made the invisible visible, and they made preventable death look like a scandal rather than a tragedy. This approach helped reshape nursing into a trained profession with standards, discipline, and pride. It also helped birth modern hospital management, where sanitation is designed, funded, and enforced. Her legacy is not only compassion, it is proof that counting can be a form of care, and that evidence can force reform when sympathy fails. Quarantine began as a civic experiment, then became a global habit. In port cities that depended on trade, leaders faced an impossible choice: open the gates and risk an outbreak, or close them and risk economic collapse. Quarantine was the compromise. Ships arriving from affected regions were held outside the harbor for a set period, and passengers waited before they could enter. The logic was simple. If illness was going to declare itself, it would do so during the delay. Over time, the practice grew more structured. Dedicated buildings were built for isolation, and officials created paperwork that followed people and goods. Quarantine also reshaped language. It turned waiting into a public health action, not just an inconvenience. The policy was imperfect. It could be enforced unfairly, and it could be used as an excuse for discrimination. Still, as a concept, it was powerful. It made disease control visible. It also made health a matter of law, borders, and time. Long before laboratories, cities learned that sometimes the most effective medicine is distance and patience applied at scale. The Black Death forced new thinking about contagion and quarantine. When plague tore through Eurasia and North Africa in the 14th century, terror spread as quickly as the disease. People searched for causes in the sky, in sin, in poisoned wells, and in foreign enemies. Yet amid the chaos, practical patterns emerged. Towns that limited contact sometimes fared better than towns that stayed open. Ports that controlled arriving ships sometimes slowed the arrival of sickness. These observations were not germ theory, yet they were a form of hard-won epidemiology. City leaders began issuing rules about movement, gatherings, and isolation. Households were marked. Watchmen enforced boundaries. Trade was disrupted, and that disruption became a tool. The plague also pushed record-keeping forward, since governments needed to count deaths and track outbreaks. Medical writing expanded as doctors tried to describe symptoms clearly and to separate rumor from recurrence. The Black Death was a catastrophe, yet it forced societies to treat disease as a public problem that demanded collective action. It laid groundwork for later public health, even without understanding the microbe. Vitamins were discovered when missing nutrients caused mysterious epidemics. For a long time, some illnesses looked like infections but refused to behave like them. Whole groups would develop weakness, nerve pain, swelling, or strange bleeding, even when there was no obvious contagion. The turning point came when researchers treated diet like an experiment. They changed one food at a time, then watched symptoms appear or vanish with almost theatrical reliability. That is how deficiency diseases became a new category. Not a curse, not a germ, a missing ingredient. Sailors, prisoners, and people living on restricted staples were hit hardest, which made the social lesson unmistakable. Food quality could decide who lived well. It could also decide who died. Once vitamins were identified, medicine gained a new kind of tool. It could prevent illness with tiny doses, and it could explain suffering that had seemed random. It also revealed a hidden truth. Health can depend on what is absent, not only on what attacks. Ether anesthesia demonstrations turned operating rooms into places of astonished silence. When ether anesthesia was first demonstrated publicly, the drama was intense. The patient went limp. The surgeon cut. The room waited for screaming that did not come. For people who had only known surgery as a test of endurance, the quiet felt impossible. These demonstrations spread quickly because the difference was so obvious. You did not need to trust a theory. You could witness the change in a single afternoon. The operating room itself began to transform. Surgeons no longer had to race. They could plan. They could repair rather than merely remove. Teams became more coordinated because time expanded. Ether had dangers, and early dosing could be crude. Some patients vomited. Some struggled to breathe. Still, the turning point was clear. Anesthesia made the patient's suffering less central to the event, and it made technique more central. It also shifted public imagination. Surgery became something you might choose, not only something you might survive. That shift opened the door to modern surgical ambition. The first cancer chemotherapies came from studying chemical warfare. Some of the darkest research of the 20th century led to an unexpected medical insight. Certain wartime chemicals were found to damage rapidly dividing cells, including cells in the bone marrow and immune system. That harm was terrifying, yet it suggested a possibility. Cancer cells also divide rapidly, often faster than healthy tissue. Early researchers began testing related compounds to see if they could slow tumor growth. The first results were mixed and often harsh. Patients suffered nausea, weakness, and infections because the drugs could not perfectly target only cancer. Still, the idea opened a door that had been closed. Cancer could sometimes be treated with systemic medicine, not only surgery or radiation. Chemotherapy became a field of balancing risk and benefit, with cycles, dosing, and combinations designed to outmaneuver resistant cells. This origin story is unsettling, but it is also deeply human. Medicine took a tool built for harm and tried to turn it towards survival. Blood transfusions became possible only after learning blood types. Early transfusions were a gamble. Some patients improved, yet others died quickly from fevers, dark urine, and shock. The mystery lasted until scientists realized that blood is not all the same. Certain markers on red cells can trigger a violent immune reaction if mismatched. When Karl Landsteiner identified major blood groups in the early 20th century, transfusion stopped being a game of chance and became a planned therapy. Doctors could test compatibility, then give blood to restore volume after bleeding or to support surgery. Soon, another hurdle fell. Blood could be stored using anticoagulants, which meant hospitals no longer relied on a donor standing beside the bed. This changed emergencies, childbirth, and battlefield care. It also created a new kind of community medicine, the blood bank. A stranger could save you without ever meeting you, simply by sharing a type that fit. The first successful organ transplants changed death's timeline for many. Transplantation sounds like science fiction until you picture the basic problem. A failing organ can pull a whole body toward the edge, yet a healthy organ from another person could restore balance. The earliest successes were modest, and they depended on careful matching. Kidneys led the way because a person can survive with one, and because dialysis could support patients while doctors learned. The greatest obstacle was rejection. The immune system is built to destroy what does not belong, so it attacks a transplanted organ as if it were an infection. Breakthroughs in tissue typing and immune-suppressing medicines made long-term survival possible. Then the field widened to livers, hearts, lungs, and more. Transplant programs also changed how societies define death and donation, creating rules, registries, and ethics debates that still evolve. For many families, a transplant became an extension of time that once seemed impossible. Medical imaging let physicians see inside living bodies without cutting. For most of history, a doctor could only guess what lay beneath skin. You listened, you pressed, you watched, and you inferred. Then, imaging opened a new window. X-rays revealed bones and hidden fractures, and they made swallowed objects suddenly visible. Over time, imaging expanded from shadows to slices, and then to detailed maps. CT scanning layered many views into cross-sections that could show bleeding, tumors, and blocked organs. Ultrasound used sound waves to trace moving structures, which made pregnancy care and heart exams far more informative. MRI added another leap by highlighting soft tissues with extraordinary contrast. Imaging also changed how patients experienced medicine. A problem could be shown, not merely described. It could be tracked over months, and it could be treated with greater precision. There were trade-offs too, including radiation risks for some scans. Still, the central shift remains astonishing. Medicine gained sight, and diagnosis became a kind of guided seeing. A single mosquito helped reveal that insects can spread deadly disease. For centuries, malaria and yellow fever seemed to rise from swamps, heat, and rotten air. Then researchers began to suspect a living courier. In the late 19th century, scientists studying malaria found parasites in blood, then later in mosquitoes, linking human illness to an insect's life cycle. Around the same era, yellow fever research showed that mosquitoes could carry disease from one person to another without direct contact. This changed more than theory. It changed what worked. Screens, bed nets, draining standing water, and targeted insect control became medical tools. It also transformed engineering projects. Places once considered impossible for large work crews became feasible when mosquito populations were controlled. The idea of vector-borne disease also reshaped modern surveillance. You were no longer only watching sick people. You were watching insects, breeding sites, seasons, and travel routes. One small bite revealed a hidden network, and public health learned to fight on a wider battlefield. Ancient Egyptian papyri listed diagnoses, recipes, and surprisingly practical wound care. Some of the oldest medical writing we have comes from Egypt on rolled sheets of papyrus. These texts do not read like magic spells alone. They often sound like a clinician talking through a problem. You see symptoms described, you see likely outcomes predicted, and you see step-by-step instructions for what to do next. There are remedies made from honey, fats, herbs, and mineral powders. Honey matters because it can slow bacterial growth, and it helps protect a wound surface. You also find advice about bandaging, splinting, and keeping injuries clean and covered. The papyri even include cases where the writer admits a condition is hopeless. That honesty is striking. It shows a tradition that valued observation over comfort. In a world without modern tools, Egyptian healers built a working medical library with real triage, real pragmatism, and real clinical voice. Hippocrates pushed illness away from curses and toward natural explanations. In the Greek world, sickness was often tied to divine displeasure or bad fate. The Hippocratic tradition challenged that instinct by asking a different question. What if illness follows patterns? What if it has causes that you can study? Instead of looking for omens, these physicians watched diet, sleep, weather, exercise, and stress. They listened to how a fever changed across days. They compared one outbreak to another. They wrote case notes that tried to separate what was seen from what was assumed. This shift mattered because it turned healing into a craft that could be taught and improved. It also encouraged restraint. A doctor could choose not to intervene when intervention would worsen the situation. The Hippocratic Oath later became a symbol, yet the deeper legacy is this steady insistence that the body belongs to nature. If nature is consistent, then medicine can be more than ritual. It can be reason. Galen's influence shaped Western medicine for well over a millennium. Galen was a physician in the Roman Empire with a talent for argument and a hunger for systems. He dissected animals, he observed wounds, and he wrote with extraordinary confidence. His books built a grand model of the body, where fluids, organs, and temperaments were linked into a single theory of health. Even when parts of that model were wrong, the clarity of his writing made it persuasive. Later, scholars treated his words like a final verdict. In Europe and parts of the Mediterranean world, students learned anatomy and physiology through Galen's lens for centuries. That long reign had two sides. It preserved medical knowledge through turbulent eras. It also made it harder for new observations to break through, because disagreement could look like ignorance. When Renaissance anatomists finally challenged Galen by dissecting human bodies, the clash was dramatic. It was not only science changing, it was authority changing. In ancient India, surgeons rebuilt noses using cheek and forehead skin flaps. In parts of ancient India, losing the nose could be a punishment and a life-altering injury. Out of that brutal reality grew an astonishing surgical solution. Surgeons developed methods to reconstruct a missing nose using living skin that stayed attached at one end, so it kept its blood supply while it healed into a new shape. One famous approach used a flap from the forehead, which could be folded down and formed around a support. Another used cheek tissue. This was not simple patchwork. It required planning, timing, and an understanding of how tissue survives. Centuries later, reports of these techniques reached European surgeons who were stunned that such repairs were possible. Modern plastic surgery still uses the same basic principle of the flap, which is a reminder that innovation does not belong to one era or one region. Sometimes a solution is born from social cruelty, and then it becomes a gift to medicine. Early Chinese doctors mapped pulses into complex systems of diagnosis. Imagine a clinic where the most important instrument is a physician's fingertips. In early Chinese medicine, pulse reading became a detailed language. Practitioners did not look for one beat. They listened for qualities, like strength, depth, speed, and rhythm. They compared sensations at different positions on the wrist, and they linked those patterns to organ systems and overall balance. The goal was not only to name a disease, it was to understand a whole person. This tradition trained extraordinary attention. It also created a shared vocabulary, so one healer could teach another what a wiry or slippery pulse felt like. To modern ears, some interpretations may sound unfamiliar, yet the underlying achievement is real. These doctors turned a subtle physical signal into a structured diagnostic art. They were doing physiology with the tools available to them, and they were doing it through disciplined touch. Even today, pulse and heart rhythm remained central clues. Only now, machines often listen beside the hand. Roman aqueducts and sewers were public health tools as much as engineering. Rome is remembered for stone and spectacle, yet some of its greatest power ran underground. Aqueducts carried vast amounts of fresh water into cities. That water fed fountains, baths, and homes. It also supported street cleaning and waste removal, which are quiet defenses against disease. Sewers helped move refuse away from crowded neighborhoods, and drainage reduced standing water in some areas. None of this made Rome free from illness. People still lived close together, and parasites and infections were common. Still, the idea was radical for its time. A city could invest in infrastructure that improved everyday health without treating one patient at a time. It was medicine scaled up to the level of civic design. Public baths also changed social life. They offered spaces for washing, exercise, and community, along with plenty of risk when water was shared. The Roman experiment shows a truth that keeps returning. Health is shaped by pipes, streets, and politics, as much as by doctors. Monasteries preserved medical texts, while empires rose and fell. When political borders fractured and cities shrank, knowledge could vanish with them. In parts of medieval Europe, monasteries became unlikely lifeboats for medicine. Monks copied manuscripts by hand, page after page, often by candlelight in cold rooms. They preserved Greek and Roman writings, and they also collected practical remedies for everyday problems like fevers, wounds, and stomach illness. Monastic gardens supplied many ingredients, so reading could be tested in lived care. Some monasteries kept infirmaries where the sick were tended, which made the written word feel urgent. This work did not always preserve accuracy, since copying can introduce errors. Still, without this culture of preservation, many texts would have been lost entirely. Knowledge needs caretakers, not only geniuses. The monastery scribe is rarely celebrated, yet that quiet labor helped keep medical memory intact until universities and printing presses could spread it more widely. Medicine survived partly because someone patiently refused to let it disappear. Medieval hospitals often served travelers, the poor, and the dying together. The word hospital can mislead us, because many medieval hospitals were not places of modern treatment. They were places of shelter. A traveler with a fever, an injured laborer, an abandoned child, and an elderly person near death might share the same hall. Care was often provided by religious orders, and the work included food, warmth, prayer, and basic nursing. In an era with limited drugs and little surgery for infection, comfort and cleanliness could still matter greatly. Some hospitals were attached to pilgrimage routes, which meant they also functioned like safe harbors in a dangerous world. Their records show that they were part clinic and part social safety net. They also reveal the beginning of institutional caregiving, where responsibility shifted from family to community structures. That change is enormous. It is easy to romanticize these places, yet they could be crowded and unsanitary. Even so, they represent an early belief that care for strangers is a civic and moral duty, not only a private one. Apothecaries once mixed medicines beside perfumes, inks, and sweet preserves. Walk into an early modern apothecary shop and you would smell a whole city in one room. Shelves held dried roots, resins, and spices. Jars of rosewater and lavender sat near pigments for artists and powders for writing. Sugar was not only a treat, it was a tool for preservation, and it helped bitter remedies go down. An apothecary learned to grind, sift, heat, and distill, and each method changed what a substance could do. The shop was also a kind of information exchange. Travelers brought stories of new plants. Sailors carried bark and seeds from distant coasts, Customers arrived with everyday complaints, and the apothecary listened before choosing a preparation. This world blurred the line between commerce and care. It also built an early supply chain for medicine, long before factories and pharmacies made everything uniform. You could see a remedy being made. You could also see how much skill it took. The first anatomy theatres turned human dissection into public education. Imagine climbing steep wooden benches, like you are arriving for a play. In the center, under bright light, a table waits. Renaissance anatomy theatres were built to teach by showing, and sometimes the audience included not only students but visiting scholars and curious officials. Dissection was rare and tightly controlled, which made each session feel like an event. A lecturer might read from an authoritative text while a demonstrator opened the body. Sometimes the body contradicted the book, and that tension could be thrilling. These theatres also changed the social meaning of anatomy. The human body became something that could be studied publicly, not only whispered about. The practice raised ethical questions too. Where did bodies come from? Who decided whose remains could be used? Even with those shadows, the theatre format accelerated learning. It created a shared visual memory that drawings alone could not match. People left having seen organs with their own eyes. That experience could reshape a lifetime of medical thinking. Vesalius corrected centuries of anatomy errors by cutting and looking carefully. For a long time, anatomy students learned from inherited authority. Much of that authority came from animal dissection. Then it was applied to humans as if the body never varied. Andreas Vesalius challenged this by doing the work directly. He dissected human bodies himself. He insisted on seeing structures in place, and he compared what he observed to what texts claimed. When something did not match, he wrote it down. This seems obvious now. In his time, it was disruptive. Vesalius also understood that observation needs communication. His book used detailed illustrations that made anatomy feel immediate and three-dimensional. Students could trace muscles and nerves like routes on a map. That visual precision made errors harder to hide behind tradition. The real revolution was not one corrected detail. It was a method. Look first. Verify. Teach with evidence. That habit helped medicine move from reverence toward investigation, and it helped the body become a landscape that could be known. The circulation of blood was proven with experiments, not tradition. Before circulation was understood, blood was often imagined as slowly made and slowly used up, like fuel in a lamp. William Harvey overturned that picture by asking a simple question. How much blood would the body need to make each day if that were true? The numbers became absurd. He then used experiments. He watched hearts pump in animals. He tied off veins and arteries and observed what swelled and what emptied. He followed the direction of valves, which act like one-way doors. Step by step, the body revealed a loop. The heart was not a warming stove. It was a pump. Blood did not drift. It traveled. This discovery did more than update anatomy. It gave doctors a new way to think about dosing medicines, about fainting, about bleeding, and about how quickly something can spread through the body. It also proved that a well-designed experiment can defeat a beautiful story. Tradition had time. Observation had the answer. Early microscopes revealed a teeming world no healer had imagined. At first, microscopes felt like toys for the curious. Then they turned into portals. When early observers looked at pond water, they saw motion everywhere. Tiny beings swam, spun, and darted through a single drop. Some called them animalcules, and the name captured the wonder. A smear from the mouth or a scraping from a tooth could also be alive with minuscule shapes. This did not instantly create germ theory. The leap from seeing microbes to blaming them for disease took time. Still, the psychological shift was immediate. The visible world was no longer the full world. There were hidden populations all around us, busy and persistent. That idea changed how medicine could imagine infection, spoilage, and decay. It also reshaped how scientists argued. If you could show a colleague what you saw through a lens, debate became less about philosophy and more about evidence. The microscope quietly trained a new kind of humility. The body, the home, and the hospital were all more crowded than anyone had guessed. The stethoscope started as a rolled paper tube for modesty. In the early 19th century, listening to a patient's chest often meant pressing an ear directly against the body. That was awkward at best, and sometimes impossible because of social norms. René Lévesque faced this problem with a young woman and improvised. He rolled paper into a tube and found that sound traveled well through it. Out of that moment came a wooden instrument that could amplify heartbeats and breath sounds while keeping distance. More importantly, it created a new kind of medical listening. Doctors began to connect specific sounds with specific diseases. Crackles could suggest fluid. Wheezes could suggest narrowed airways. Changes in rhythm could hint at damaged valves. The stethoscope also changed trust. A patient could watch a doctor listen, pause, and think, as if the body was speaking in a language only practice could translate. Over time, it became a symbol, yet it started as a practical solution to a human situation. It reminds us that medicine often advances through small changes in how we observe. Antiseptic surgery began when carbolic acid met the chaos of infection. Before antisepsis, the most feared part of an operation often came afterward. Wounds that looked clean could turn foul. Fevers rose. Pus appeared. Death followed, and it could feel inevitable. Joseph Lister approached this horror with a new suspicion. If microscopic life could cause decay, then it might also cause surgical infection. He used carbolic acid, also called phenol, to clean instruments, dressings, and sometimes the air around the wound. The results were dramatic in an era used to surgical wards that reeked of infection. More patients lived. More bones healed without amputation. The idea was not instantly welcomed, since carbolic acid could irritate tissue and the procedures were burdensome. Still, the core insight held. Infection could be prevented, not merely endured. Antiseptic practice then evolved into aseptic technique, where the goal became sterility from the start. Lister's work helped turn surgery into something repeatable rather than reckless. It gave surgeons a new kind of confidence, and it gave patients a better chance at waking up and going home. The first ambulances transformed battlefields into moving medical systems. Before organized ambulances, the wounded often lay where they fell, waiting for the fighting to end or for luck to arrive. Many died from blood loss or shock long before a surgeon could help. Early ambulance services changed the logic of war medicine. They created teams who went forward, brought the injured back, and began care during transport. That meant splinting, bandaging, warming, and triage decisions made under pressure. It also meant routes, schedules, and coordination, since a vehicle is only helpful if it can reach you in time. Over the years, this idea evolved into mobile hospitals, stretcher squads, and systems for prioritizing who needed immediate surgery. The core insight was simple. Time is a treatment. Minutes matter as much as medicines. The ambulance turned rescue into a planned process rather than a desperate scramble. That battlefield innovation later shaped civilian emergency care, where speed, training, and coordination still decide who lives. Cholera maps showed that data can hunt a killer. In a city struck by sudden, violent diarrhea and death, fear can feel like fog. In 19th century London, many blamed foul air. John Snow looked for something you could count. He went door to door, he recorded where victims lived, and he marked deaths on a map. A pattern appeared. Cases clustered around a particular public water pump. That was a shocking suggestion, since water looked clear and seemed wholesome. Snow pushed further. He investigated workplaces, households, and outliers, including people who lived far away but preferred that pumps taste. His argument was not a speech. It was a picture made from facts. When officials removed the pump handle, the outbreak eased. Cholera did not vanish forever, yet the method changed history. Mapping turned disease into a trackable event. It showed that the environment can be a suspect. It also helped launch epidemiology as a detective science, where the city itself becomes the evidence. Pasteur's experiments helped topple the idea of spontaneous generation. For centuries, many people believed life could appear from non-living matter, like maggots rising from meat. Louis Pasteur challenged that with elegant experiments that felt almost like stagecraft. He used flasks with long, curved necks that let air in but trapped dust and microbes. Broth inside stayed clear when contamination could not reach it. When the flask was tipped so liquid touched the trapped dust, life bloomed quickly. The message was unsettling and thrilling. Microbes came from microbes, not from nothing. This mattered far beyond philosophy. If tiny organisms caused spoilage, then controlling exposure could protect food and drink. Pasteurization grew from that insight, using heat to reduce microbial load and extend safety. His work also strengthened germ theory, since it offered a practical way to think about infection. You could not blame mystery vapors anymore. You could blame living agents with rules. Pasteur's flasks made the invisible feel real, and they gave public health a new foundation built on controlled evidence. Koch's postulates tried to pin each disease to a specific microbe. Once germs entered the conversation, medicine needed a way to prove guilt. Robert Koch offered a method that felt like courtroom procedure. Find the suspected organism in every case. Isolate it. Grow it. Introduce it into a healthy host. See the same disease appear. Then re-isolate the same organism. This framework helped transform bacteria from curiosities into causes, and it strengthened laboratory medicine as a standard. Koch's work with anthrax and tuberculosis made microbes feel like identifiable enemies, not vague clouds of contagion. Yet the postulates also revealed limits. Some pathogens are hard to grow. Some diseases involve multiple agents or depend on host vulnerability. Some microbes can live quietly without causing illness. Even with those complications, the basic approach reshaped scientific thinking. It demanded reproducibility. It forced clearer definitions. It helped physicians stop arguing from authority and start arguing from tests. Koch's postulates were not the final word. They were a powerful first language for proving causation in infectious disease. Vaccines expanded from one triumph into a whole strategy of prevention. Once vaccination against smallpox showed what prevention could do, the idea refused to stay in one box. Scientists began hunting for other diseases where the immune system could be trained ahead of time. The challenge was different each time. Some vaccines used weakened organisms. Others used killed ones. Later approaches used purified parts that taught the immune system what to recognize without causing full illness. The impact was social as well as medical. Vaccine campaigns required refrigeration, trusted messengers, and clear schedules. They also required politics, since fear and rumor can spread faster than any pathogen. Over generations, vaccination reshaped childhood, since diseases that once swept through schools became rarer. It also reshaped global planning, since international travel makes outbreaks everyone's problem. Vaccines did not eliminate suffering. They changed the default expectation. Instead of waiting for disease and then reacting, communities could build protection in advance. That shift is one of the most profound changes in medical history, because it treats time itself as a shield. The first X-ray amazed the public with a living hand's bones. When Wilhelm Röntgen produced the first X-ray images, the reaction was part wonder and part unease. Here was a way to see what had always been hidden, and to do it without cutting. One famous image showed the bones of a hand with a ring still visible, which made the effect feel personal and uncanny. Medicine quickly grasped the usefulness. Fractures could be confirmed. Bullets could be located. Dental problems could be revealed. Yet the early excitement came with danger. People did not yet understand radiation exposure, and some experimenters suffered burns and long-term harm. Over time, safety practices evolved, and imaging became more controlled and targeted. The deeper change was cultural. The body became something that could be inspected in life, not only studied after death. Diagnosis became more certain, and surgeons could plan with evidence rather than guesswork. The X-ray was not just a picture. It was a new sense. It gave medicine a kind of vision. Insulin changed diabetes from a death sentence into a managed life. Before insulin therapy, children with type 1 diabetes often wasted away despite strict diets that bordered on starvation. Families watched weight drop, thirst rise, and energy vanish. Doctors could describe the pattern but could not stop it. Then, insulin arrived, extracted and purified, and the transformation could be immediate. A child near death could regain strength within days. That change felt like resurrection to those who saw it. Insulin also rewrote what chronic illness could mean. Instead of a short and tragic timeline, life could stretch forward with routines, monitoring, and ongoing care. It demanded new habits too. Patients learned to measure doses, recognize low blood sugar, and balance food with activity. Over the decades, insulin production improved, delivery devices evolved, and glucose testing became far more precise. The story remains one of medicine's most dramatic pivots, because it turned a condition defined by inevitable decline into a condition defined by management. It also reminded the world that a single missing hormone can hold a whole life in its hands. Penicillin was noticed as mold, then purified into a revolution. The story begins with a messy plate in a laboratory. Alexander Fleming noticed that mold had contaminated a culture of bacteria, and around the mold there was a clear zone where bacteria could not grow. Many people might have tossed the plate away. Fleming paid attention. He realized the mold was producing something lethal to bacteria. Turning that observation into a usable drug was the hard part. Later, scientists purified penicillin and learned how to produce it at scale, especially during wartime when infected wounds were killing soldiers. When penicillin reached patients, it could stop infections that had once spread uncontrollably. It changed the odds for pneumonia, sepsis, and surgical complications. It also changed medicine's confidence. For the first time, doctors had a weapon that directly targeted bacterial growth. Yet the revolution carried a warning, since misuse encourages resistance. The mold on the plate gave the world a miracle, and it also introduced the responsibility to protect that miracle from being worn down. Blood banks made emergency care faster than family donors ever could. Before blood banking, transfusion often depended on finding a compatible person quickly, then asking them to donate on the spot. That worked poorly in disasters, in childbirth emergencies, and in war. Blood banks changed everything by making blood a stored resource. With anticoagulants and refrigeration, blood could be collected ahead of time, tested, labeled, and kept ready. Suddenly, treatment could begin in minutes rather than hours. This also pushed new standards. Donor screening reduced risk. Testing for infections became central. Logistics became as important as bedside skill, since temperature control and record-keeping could decide whether a unit was safe. Blood banks also created a new kind of public participation in medicine. Ordinary people could donate on a routine day, and that donation might save someone they would never meet. In that way, blood banking turned community into infrastructure. It made survival less dependent on chance and more dependent on planning. It also made modern surgery, trauma care, and intensive care far more feasible, since blood loss could be addressed rapidly and reliably. Scurvy fell when sailors learned citrus could be life-saving. On long sea voyages, sailors could look healthy at departure and then slowly unravel. Gums swelled. Old wounds reopened. Bruises spread like dark maps across the skin. Some men became too weak to climb, chew, or stand. This was scurvy, and it haunted navies as much as storms did. The breakthrough was not glamorous. It was a fruit. When citrus was added to rations, the collapse often reversed with shocking speed. That result did more than save crews. It changed what governments were willing to stock, preserve, and transport. It also helped build the idea that controlled comparisons can reveal the truth, even when the cause is invisible. A ship became a floating laboratory. The lesson traveled back to land. If a single food could prevent such misery, then diet was not just comfort. It was medicine. The fall of scurvy is a reminder that the most powerful treatment can be simple if you know what the body is quietly missing. Anesthesia's rise also created a new medical specialty, the anesthetist. Once pain could be reduced, a new problem appeared. Keeping someone safely unconscious is not a switch you flip. It is a moving target. Breathing can slow. Airways can obstruct. Blood pressure can fall. A patient can slip too deep or not deep enough. Early surgeons sometimes tried to manage anesthesia themselves, but the demands were relentless. Someone had to watch constantly, and someone had to understand the body's warning signs in real time. That need created a new kind of clinician. The anesthetist became the guardian of the invisible, tracking pulse, breath, color, and reflexes, while everyone else focused on the incision. Over time, anesthetic drugs improved, and monitoring devices grew more precise. The role expanded beyond the operating room into pain control and critical care. This specialty changed surgery's culture. It made teamwork essential, and it made safety a discipline with its own expertise. The quiet person at the head of the bed became one of the most important people in the room. Early hospitals were dangerous places, until hygiene became a discipline. It is easy to assume hospitals have always been places of healing. For many patients, they were once places of higher risk. Crowded wards, shared bedding, soiled dressings, and unwashed hands created perfect conditions for infection. Surgeries were performed without sterile technique, and wounds were left exposed to bacteria that no one could yet name. Patients came for one problem and acquired another, sometimes deadlier. The shift happened gradually, through hard lessons and growing evidence. Cleaning became routine. Linen was changed. Ventilation was improved. Instruments were washed and then sterilized. Waste was managed with intention rather than habit. These changes sound basic, yet they required budgets, training, and enforcement. Hygiene had to become a system, not a suggestion. The emotional impact was profound. Hospitals began to earn trust. They became places where you could reasonably expect to leave alive. This transformation also changed medical ambition. When infection was no longer assumed, doctors could attempt procedures that had once been unthinkable. Cleanliness did not just make hospitals nicer. It made modern medicine possible. The first intensive care units grew from constant bedside monitoring. Some patients do not need a miracle. They need attention, minute after minute, when small changes can become disasters. That idea led to the earliest intensive care units. Instead of scattering the sickest people across a hospital, clinicians grouped them where nurses and doctors could watch continuously. Monitors tracked heart rhythm and breathing. Staff learned to interpret alarms and subtle shifts in consciousness. Oxygen delivery, fluids, and medications could be adjusted quickly, not hours later. The ICU also created a new tempo of medicine. Decisions became faster, and teamwork became more structured. Specialists collaborated in real time because organ systems failed together, not in tidy isolation. Families experienced this as a strange new world of machines, lights, and vigilance. The unit could feel intimidating, yet it offered something older hospitals could not. It offered time. By catching deterioration early, intensive care could turn a cliff edge into a slope. Many modern treatments, from complex surgery to advanced infection control, rely on that safety net. The ICU became a place where medicine learned to stay awake through the night. Oxygen therapy reshaped the odds for pneumonia and premature newborns. When the lungs fail, the body's crisis is immediate. Cells can endure hunger longer than they can endure lack of oxygen. Before oxygen therapy was widely available, pneumonia could turn deadly simply because breathing could not keep up. Premature babies faced an even sharper challenge. Their lungs were not fully ready for air. Oxygen therapy changed those odds by giving the body what it needs most, right when it needs it. Hospitals developed ways to deliver oxygen safely through masks, tents, and later more precise devices. For newborns, warm incubators and controlled oxygen became part of a new kind of care that treated fragility as treatable, not hopeless. This was not a perfect solution. Too much oxygen can harm delicate tissues, so careful control became essential. Still, the overall shift was enormous. Oxygen stopped being a background element you never think about. It became a medicine you could prescribe, measure, and adjust. It turned breath into a therapy, and it helped many people survive long enough for the lungs to recover. The iron lung became a mechanical stand-in for breathing. During polio outbreaks, some patients lost the ability to breathe because the muscles that move the chest stopped working. The mind remained alert while the body could not pull in air. The iron lung answered that horror with engineering. It was a large metal chamber that enclosed the body and used pressure changes to make the chest rise and fall. In a sense, it breathed around the patient. Rows of these machines created eerie hospital rooms where the rhythm was mechanical and relentless. The iron lung did not cure polio. It bought time. Some people recovered enough muscle control to breathe again. Others lived inside these devices for years, building whole lives around a machine's steady pulse. This technology also changed medical thinking about respiratory failure. It showed that life support could be external, and it proved that replacing one body function can preserve the rest. Later, ventilators became smaller and more flexible, yet the iron lung remains an iconic symbol of crisis medicine. It was a life-saving shelter made of steel, built for a disease that attacked breath itself. Polio epidemics spurred mass vaccination campaigns unlike anything before. Polio struck with a special kind of dread, because it targeted children and because it arrived in waves. In summer, swimming pools and playgrounds could feel like threats. Parents watched for fevers, stiff necks, and sudden weakness. Hospitals filled with patients who needed braces, therapy, or breathing support. This fear created urgency, and urgency created scale. When vaccines became available, communities organized campaigns that were as much about logistics as biology. Schools and civic halls became temporary clinics. Volunteers guided lines. Public messaging tried to turn anxiety into action. The campaigns also became a test of trust. People had to believe the needle would protect rather than harm. Over time, mass vaccination reduced cases dramatically in many places, and public memory shifted from panic to relief. The polio story shows what happens when society decides to act together. It is not only a medical tale. It is a tale of coordination, persuasion, and collective hope. It also left a lasting blueprint for how to deliver prevention at national scale. Early antibiotics transformed childbirth, then forced new caution about overuse. Infections after delivery once killed many women, sometimes within days. Even a healthy birth could end with fever, pain, and rapid decline if bacteria entered wounds. Antibiotics changed that landscape. They reduced deaths from postpartum infections, and they made complicated deliveries less terrifying. They also shifted obstetric practice, since doctors could intervene more readily when they had a tool against infection. Yet this success carried a hidden cost. When antibiotics are used too often, bacteria that survive can spread in hospitals and communities. Maternity wards are busy places with vulnerable patients, so resistant strains can gain a foothold quickly. That is why modern obstetrics balances prevention with restraint. Antibiotics are chosen carefully, and they are reserved for clear needs like confirmed infection or specific high-risk situations. Hygiene, screening, and good technique do much of the protective work. This chapter in medical history is a perfect example of medicine's double-edged gifts. A drug can save lives quickly, and it can also create a future problem if it is treated like an unlimited resource. Tuberculosis sanatoriums mixed rest, fresh air, and hope with isolation. Before effective drug treatment, tuberculosis could last for years, and it could spread easily through close contact. Sanatoriums were built as a response that was part medical theory and part social strategy. Patients were sent to places with strict routines, nourishing food, and long hours outdoors, even in cold weather. The belief was that fresh air and rest could strengthen the body's defenses. Isolation also reduced transmission, which protected families and crowded cities. Life in a sanatorium could feel peaceful to some and imprisoning to others. There were quiet porches lined with blankets, but there was also the constant presence of decline. Some patients improved, some did not. Still, sanatoriums shaped public health by making chronic infectious disease visible. They created systems for diagnosis, record-keeping, and long-term care. They also influenced architecture and nursing practice, since airflow and sunlight were treated as tools. When antibiotics later arrived, many sanatoriums closed or changed purpose. Yet their legacy remains. They represent a time when medicine fought a deadly microbe with environment, routine, and endurance, while waiting for chemistry to catch up. The placebo effect proved expectation can alter pain and symptoms. A surprising part of healing lives in the brain's predictions. When someone believes a treatment will help, the body can respond with real changes. Pain can ease. Nausea can settle. Even heart rate and stress hormones can shift. This does not mean an illness is imaginary. It means the nervous system is powerful, and it constantly edits what you feel. Placebos reveal that context matters. The white coat, The ritual of a pill, the confidence in a plan, and the feeling of being cared for can all change the experience of symptoms. Researchers have even seen the opposite effect. If someone expects harm, side effects can appear more readily. That is called the nocebo effect. The lesson is both hopeful and humbling. Medicine is not only chemistry hitting tissue, it is also meaning shaping sensation. Good care uses that truth without deception, by building trust, clarity, and calm. Randomized trials emerged to separate real cures from convincing stories. For centuries, medicine was full of testimonies. A remedy seemed to work, so it spread. The problem is that bodies often improve on their own. Symptoms come and go. People remember successes and forget failures. Randomized trials were invented to cut through that fog. The idea is simple and ruthless. Assign people to different treatments by chance, not by preference or physician hunch. Then compare outcomes. Chance spreads hidden differences evenly, at least in theory, so the treatments face a fair test. This approach has exposed miracle cures that were only luck and hype. It has also confirmed therapies that truly help, even when they seemed too modest to matter. Randomization turned medicine into a discipline that can admit error publicly, then correct itself. It changed how drugs are approved. It changed how guidelines are written. It also changed what counts as proof, because feeling certain is no longer enough. In medical studies, double-blinding was invented to protect medicine from human bias. In a double-blind study, neither patient nor clinician knows who received what until the end. This creates a strange kind of fairness. The data has room to speak without being coached. It also protects against subtle changes in care. A nurse might encourage one group more than another without realizing it. A doctor might adjust other treatments based on expectations. Blinding reduces those ripples. It does not eliminate every problem, since side effects can reveal clues. Still, it is one of the smartest inventions in medical research, because it treats the human mind as part of the experiment. It admits that bias is normal, then it builds a wall around it. Even honest observers can be fooled by what they hope to see. If a doctor knows who got the new drug, they may look harder for improvement. If a patient knows they got the real treatment, they may report feeling better. Double-blinding blocks both forms of bias. Early medical ethics codes grew from scandals, suffering, and public outrage. Ethics in medicine did not appear because everyone agreed to be kind. It hardened into rules because people were harmed. When doctors or institutions crossed lines, stories spread. Patients were used as means rather than ends. Communities demanded accountability. Out of those shocks came early codes that tried to define limits. Some rules focused on competence, and they warned against reckless experimentation. Others focused on privacy and dignity, since illness makes people vulnerable. Professional groups also began to police themselves, because trust is the foundation of medicine. If the public cannot trust a physician, even good treatments can be refused. Ethics codes became a way to say, this profession has duties beyond profit or prestige. They also became living documents that evolve with new technologies. Each generation inherits both triumphs and stains. The codes are a response to that history. They are medicine admitting, in writing, that power requires restraint. The concept of informed consent was written in response to abuses. For much of history, doctors decided and patients endured. That attitude collapsed when abuses became impossible to ignore. Informed consent grew as a moral and legal demand that patients must understand what is being done to their bodies, and they must agree freely. Consent is not a signature on a form. It is a conversation with clear information about risks, benefits, and alternatives, including the option to refuse. This changed the tone of medicine. It forced physicians to explain rather than command. It also recognized that people bring their own values to medical choices. Two patients can face the same odds and choose differently, and both can be reasonable. Informed consent also protects against coercion, especially when money, authority, or desperation are involved. It remains imperfect in practice, since fear and complexity can overwhelm understanding. Still, the principle is revolutionary. It places autonomy beside expertise, and it treats the patient as a partner rather than a subject. Psychiatry shifted from asylums toward therapy, then toward medications. The history of mental health care is a story of changing explanations and changing spaces. Early asylums were often meant to remove people from danger or from public view. Some offered refuge. Many became overcrowded and harsh, especially when resources ran thin. Over time, new ideas emerged about talking as treatment. Therapy grew into many forms, from structured approaches to open-ended exploration, all built on the idea that words and relationships can change a mind. Then medications arrived that could calm hallucinations, lift some depressions, and reduce severe anxiety. That opened doors for many people who could not function before. It also introduced new tensions. Pills can help, but they can also bring side effects and dependence. Therapy can heal, but access is unequal and progress can be slow. Modern psychiatry often tries to combine tools rather than worship one. The shift is not a neat march forward. It is a long search for humane care, guided by changing science and changing cultural attitudes. Electroconvulsive therapy survived by becoming safer, gentler, and more precise. ECT carries a heavy reputation, partly because early use could be frightening and poorly controlled. Yet it persisted because, for some severe depressions and certain other conditions, it can work when nothing else does. Modern practice looks very different from old portrayals. Patients receive anesthesia and muscle relaxation, which prevents the violent convulsions that once caused injuries. Clinicians carefully control the dose and placement of electrodes, and they monitor brain and heart activity during treatment. Sessions are planned as a course, not as punishment or chaos. Side effects can still occur, especially memory problems, so the decision is serious and individualized. The deeper reason ECT remains is that it reveals something profound about the brain. Changing electrical patterns can change mood, sleep, appetite, and despair. It suggests that mental suffering has biological hooks that can be reached even when words and pills fail. ECT's survival is a story of medicine refining a blunt tool into a measured intervention. Lobotomy's rise and fall warned how fashion can masquerade as science. In the early 20th century, overcrowded psychiatric hospitals created desperation. Families wanted relief. Clinicians wanted something that seemed to work. Lobotomy entered that space as a dramatic promise. By cutting or disrupting connections in the front of the brain, doctors hoped to reduce severe agitation, delusions, or violence. Some patients became quieter. Many also lost vital parts of themselves. Personality flattened. Motivation vanished. Some suffered seizures or profound disability. The procedure spread quickly in certain places because it was fast and it fit a narrative of decisive action. It also benefited from authority and publicity, which can drown out quiet warnings. Over time, outcomes became harder to defend. Better medications arrived. Ethical standards sharpened. Lobotomy became a symbol of medical overconfidence. The lesson is not only about one procedure. It is about incentives and urgency. When a society demands quick solutions, medicine can be tempted to confuse control with healing. Lobotomy's fall reminds us that doing something is not the same as helping. Pain medicine evolved from opium poppies to modern anesthetic chemistry. Pain relief has always been one of medicine's most human goals, because suffering is immediate and persuasive. The opium poppy offered powerful comfort, and cultures across the world learned to use it in many forms. Later, chemists isolated and modified its active compounds, which created medicines that could be dosed more precisely. That brought enormous benefit in surgery, trauma, and cancer care. It also brought risk, because the same pathways that quiet pain can also reward the brain in ways that drive dependence. Modern pain medicine has had to grow wiser. It now includes nerve blocks, anti-inflammatory drugs, physical therapy, psychology, and rehabilitation, along with carefully managed opioids when appropriate. Researchers have also developed new anesthetic agents and delivery methods that aim to reduce harm. Pain is not a single signal. It is a system that involves nerves, brain, emotion, and memory. The history of pain medicine is the history of learning that relief must be balanced with safety and that comfort can come from many directions. The first heart bypass surgeries rerouted blood, like living plumbing. When arteries that feed the heart become narrowed, the heart muscle can starve even while blood is plentiful elsewhere. Bypass surgery answered that problem with a bold idea: create a new route. Surgeons used a vessel from the leg or chest to build a detour around the blockage, so oxygen-rich blood could reach threatened tissue again. Early operations were high risk, and success depended on improving anesthesia, infection control, and the ability to support the body during complex procedures. Over time, techniques refined. Surgeons learned which vessels lasted best. They learned how to protect the heart muscle during the operation. For many patients, bypass brought dramatic relief from crushing chest pain and reduced the risk of a fatal heart attack. It also changed how people imagined the heart. It was no longer an untouchable symbol. It was a repairable organ with parts that could be rerouted and renewed. Bypass surgery became one of the clearest examples of mechanical thinking applied to living tissue, with life-changing results. The pacemaker began as bulky hardware, then shrank into a quiet helper. Early devices were closer to lab equipment than something you could live with. Some were plugged into war power. Some delivered jolts that were hard to fine-tune. Yet the need was urgent, because a heart that pauses too long can steal consciousness in seconds. Engineers and doctors kept refining the idea, which was to replace a failing rhythm with a reliable spark. Over time, pacemakers became smaller, battery-powered, and smarter. Leads were designed to sit in the heart safely, and the pulse could be adjusted to match activity and rest. People who once feared sudden collapse could walk, work, and sleep with far more confidence. There is also something emotionally powerful about it. A device the size of a few stacked coins can keep time for the body's most important beat. It is not a cure for every heart problem. It is a steady companion, working in silence, correcting each missed note before you ever notice. Dialysis turned kidney failure from final into postponable. When kidneys stop working, the blood becomes a dangerous place. Waste builds up, fluid shifts, and the body's chemistry drifts into life-threatening territory. Dialysis answered that crisis with an astonishing substitute. It cleans the blood outside the body through a filter, then returns it, giving patients a bridge where none existed. The early days were difficult. Machines were large, sessions were long, and access to the bloodstream was a constant challenge. Even so, the basic result was extraordinary. People who would have died in weeks could live for years, raising children and building routines around treatment days. Dialysis also changed medical planning. It made time for transplants. It made time for research. It made time for people to decide what kind of life they wanted, even with a demanding schedule. It is not an easy therapy, and it carries burdens. Still, as a human invention, it is breathtaking. It is a way of borrowing function, one session at a time. But discovery of DNA's structure changed how medicine defines inheritance. Before DNA was understood, heredity could feel like a family mystery. Traits and illnesses appeared across generations with no clear mechanism. Once DNA became a central idea, medicine gained a physical explanation for inheritance and a new way to ask questions. Genes could carry instructions. Mutations could alter those instructions. Risk could be traced through families with more precision than stories and guesses. This reshaped diagnosis for many conditions, especially those that begin early in life. It also changed how scientists searched for causes of disease, since they could look for patterns in the code rather than only in symptoms. The change was not only technical, it was personal. People began to think about ancestry, probability, and identity in a new language. And that language sometimes brought relief and sometimes brought fear. DNA did not remove uncertainty because genes interact with environment and chance. Yet it gave medicine a map where there had been fog, and it made prevention and planning feel more possible. Newborn screening caught hidden diseases before they could steal futures. Some serious conditions are invisible at birth. A baby can look perfect, feed well, and still carry a metabolic problem that will quietly damage the brain or organs within weeks. Newborn screening was designed to catch those threats before they announce themselves. A few drops of blood taken from a heel can be tested for markers that suggest specific disorders, and if a result is positive, treatment can begin immediately. Sometimes the treatment is a special diet. Sometimes it is a supplement, a hormone, or a medication that prevents toxic buildup. The power of screening is that it shifts the timeline. Instead of racing after irreversible harm, care can start while the child is still thriving. This also created new public health responsibilities, since screening programs must be accurate, fast, and paired with follow-up care. Families need clear guidance, not panic. When it works well, the result can feel miraculous. A child who might have faced disability can grow up never knowing how close the danger was, because it was caught in time. Ultrasound let doctors watch a fetus move in real time. Before ultrasound, pregnancy was understood through indirect clues. Measuring the belly, listening for a heartbeat, waiting for kicks. Ultrasound changed that by turning sound waves into a moving picture. Suddenly, clinicians could confirm a heartbeat early, estimate growth, and spot certain problems while there was still time to plan. Parents could also see their child's outline, a moment that often turns abstract anticipation into something real. The technology matters beyond emotion, though. Ultrasound helped guide safer procedures, such as checking the position of the placenta or monitoring twins. It improved care for high-risk pregnancies by revealing growth restriction or low fluid, which can change decisions about timing and delivery. It also became a tool in many other parts of medicine, from examining the heart to looking at gallstones. The wonder is still the same. A probe on the skin, a screen flickering to life, and an unseen world becoming visible without harm. CT scans stitched X-rays into cross-sections, like slices of life. A plain X-ray is a shadow, which can hide important details behind overlapping tissue. CT scanning solved that by taking many X-ray views and combining them into cross-sectional images. It is like turning a solid object into thin slices, so you can see what is inside, layer by layer. This was transformative in emergencies. A doctor could identify internal bleeding after trauma, detect a stroke, or locate an inflamed appendix quickly. It also changed cancer care by showing tumors more clearly and helping plan surgery or radiation. The speed of modern scanners matters too, since time can decide outcomes in the emergency room. There are trade-offs, because CT involves more radiation than a simple X-ray, so clinicians weigh benefit against risk. Still, the shift in diagnostic power is hard to overstate. CT made the body readable in a new way. It turned hidden anatomy into information you can act on, often within minutes. MRI used magnetism to show soft tissues with astonishing detail. MRI feels like science fiction because it uses no X-rays. Instead, strong magnets and radio waves interact with the body's atoms, and the returning signals are translated into images. This made it especially valuable for soft tissues that are difficult to see clearly with older methods. The brain, spinal cord, muscles and ligaments became far easier to evaluate. A suspected tumor could be outlined. A torn knee ligament could be confirmed. Multiple sclerosis plaques could be tracked over time. MRI also changed research, since it opened new ways to study anatomy and, in some forms, brain activity. The experience is memorable for patients too. The machine is loud, the tunnel can feel tight, and stillness matters. Yet the outcome can be astonishing. Doctors can see fine structures without making an incision. They can compare images across months, and they can plan treatment with far more confidence. MRI is a reminder that medicine advances not only through drugs and scalpels, but through new ways of seeing, built from physics and patience. The first successful IVF birth changed what fertility medicine could promise. For many couples, infertility once meant an ending with no options. IVF changed that by moving the earliest steps of conception into the laboratory, then returning an embryo to the uterus where pregnancy could continue. The first success proved the concept, and it also reshaped social expectations. Fertility became something medicine could sometimes assist rather than only observe. IVF required new skills, from hormone timing to careful embryo culture, and it raised new ethical questions about embryos, selection, and access. It also brought new kinds of hope, along with new kinds of stress, because treatment can be expensive and emotionally demanding. Over time, techniques improved, success rates rose, and the number of families created through IVF grew into the millions. The deeper shift is psychological. Parenthood became less tied to luck alone, and more tied to possibility. IVF did not erase infertility, and it did not guarantee a child. Still, it expanded the map of what could happen, and that expansion changed lives. Antiretroviral therapy turned HIV from fatal into chronic for many. In the early years of the epidemic, an HIV diagnosis often carried the expectation of decline and death. Antiretroviral therapy changed that by attacking the virus at multiple steps in its life cycle, reducing the amount of virus in the body and protecting the immune system. When treatment is consistent, many people can reach viral suppression, which dramatically improves health and reduces transmission risk. This transformed HIV care from crisis medicine into long-term management, with regular monitoring and attention to side effects and drug interactions. It also changed the social story. People could plan careers, relationships, and futures again. The shift was not automatic or equal everywhere, because access to medication has varied widely, and stigma has continued to cause harm. Still, as a medical achievement, antiretroviral therapy is one of the clearest examples of sustained scientific progress changing the meaning of a diagnosis. It turned fear into something more workable, which is a different kind of medicine and a different kind of survival. Hand washing became famous because one stubborn doctor counted dead mothers. In a busy maternity hospital, 2 wards had very different death rates from childbed fever. One was staffed largely by doctors and students. The other was staffed largely by midwives. Ignaz Semmelweis refused to accept that difference as chance. He looked for what varied between the wards, and he noticed that doctors often came straight from autopsies to laboring patients. He suspected that something carried on hands was poisoning mothers. His response was direct. He required hand washing with a strong chlorine solution before examinations. The death rate fell sharply. Even with results that clear, he faced resistance, ridicule, and anger, since the idea implied that respected clinicians were causing harm. The tragedy is that his evidence was strong before the wider medical world was ready to understand microbes. The lesson is enduring. Some breakthroughs begin as uncomfortable arithmetic, written in hospital ledgers, where compassion shows up as refusal to look away from the numbers. Typhus control helped show that delousing can save entire armies. Typhus used to travel with soldiers the way smoke travels with fire. It struck hardest in cold, crowded camps where uniforms were worn for weeks and washing was rare. The enemy was not a poisoned well or a bad wind. It was the body louse, which thrives when people are packed together and exhausted. Once that link became clear, prevention suddenly looked practical. You could fight typhus with hot water, clean clothing, and delousing stations that treated seams and blankets where lice hide. Simple measures could protect thousands more effectively than heroic medicine at the bedside. Campaigns began to treat hygiene like strategy, not comfort. When delousing reduced outbreaks, commanders learned a blunt lesson. A disease can defeat an army without winning a single battle. This chapter is startling because it shows how a tiny insect can decide history and how public health can become a form of defense. Antibiotic resistance revealed evolution happening inside hospitals. Hospitals are places where bacteria meet intense pressure. Antibiotics are used often, vulnerable patients are close together, and invasive devices create new routes into the body. In that environment, evolution becomes visible. The microbes that survive treatment are the ones that multiply, and soon a ward can shift from mostly sensitive strains to mostly resistant ones. The change can happen fast enough to trek across months. It is also communal. Bacteria can share resistance genes through small loops of DNA, which means one species can hand protection to another. That makes outbreaks feel less like a single villain and more like a network learning in real time. This forced medicine to build new habits. Infection control became more rigorous. Stewardship programs began to watch prescribing the way pilots watch fuel. Laboratories began flagging patterns early, before they spread. Resistance is frightening, yet it also taught a powerful truth. Evolution is not ancient history. It is a living process that can unfold under fluorescent lights. The discovery of blood pressure made invisible risk suddenly measurable. For generations, a person could feel fine while damage quietly accumulated in arteries and organs. Doctors could suspect trouble, but they had no simple number to track it. The ability to measure blood pressure changed that. A cuff, a gauge, and a careful ear turned an unseen force into something that could be recorded, compared, and acted on. That created a new kind of diagnosis. A patient might arrive with no symptoms and leave with a warning that their heart and kidneys were under strain. It also changed prevention. Lifestyle advice could be tied to a measurable goal. Medications could be adjusted based on response rather than guesswork. Blood pressure measurement helped explain strokes and heart failure patterns that had seemed random. It also brought a new kind of patience to care, since the goal became long-term protection rather than quick relief. Medicine gained a quiet superpower. It could detect danger before pain announced it. The first vaccines relied on the immune system's memory, not brute force. Long before anyone could describe antibodies, healers noticed a pattern that felt almost magical. Survive certain infections once, and you were often protected later. Vaccination turned that observation into strategy. The goal was to train the body's defenses without forcing it through the full danger of the disease. Instead of fighting with harsh purges or desperate bleeding, vaccination worked with the immune system's ability to remember. That memory is not a feeling. It is a physical change in cells that learn what to recognize and how to respond faster next time. This was a new way of thinking about medicine. It treated protection as something you could build in advance, like reinforcing a wall before a storm. It also changed how communities planned for health, since one person's immunity can slow spread to others. Early vaccines were imperfect and debated, yet the core idea was revolutionary. The body could be taught, and that teaching could save lives. Public sanitation lowered death rates more than many early drugs. If you want to understand why modern cities became safer, do not start with pills. Start with pipes. Clean water systems, sewage removal, and reliable waste management changed what people were exposed to every day. When human waste stopped leaking into drinking supplies, diseases that spread through contaminated water lost their easiest path. When garbage was managed, vermin and insects were easier to control. When streets were drained, stagnant water became less common. These changes did not depend on perfect personal behavior. They worked quietly in the background for everyone who lived there. That is why sanitation is one of the most powerful medical interventions ever invented, even though it sits outside the clinic. It also shifted politics. Public health became a responsibility of governance, budgeting, and engineering. People began to expect that a city should protect them from preventable disease. Sanitation did not end illness, yet it changed the baseline of survival. It made everyday life less hazardous, and it did it at population scale. Oral rehydration therapy saved millions with sugar, salt, and water. Diarrheal disease can kill quickly, not by mystery, but by mathematics. The body loses water and vital salts faster than it can replace them, and shock follows. Oral rehydration therapy answered that with a surprisingly precise recipe. Sugar helps the intestine absorb sodium, and sodium helps pull water back into the body. Mixed correctly, this simple solution can turn a deadly spiral into recovery, even without advanced hospitals. Its power is almost unfair. It does not require rare drugs. It can be taught, made, and distributed widely. Parents can use it at home. Clinics can use it in outbreaks. It became a cornerstone of global child health because it meets disease where it strikes hardest, in places where intravenous fluids are scarce. Oral rehydration therapy also carries a lesson about medical elegance. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough is not complex technology. Sometimes it is understanding the body's own transport systems and using them to keep life going until the danger passes. Radiotherapy emerged when new physics met desperate clinical need. When radiation was first explored, it felt like a mysterious force that could pass through the body and leave effects behind. Early experimenters learned its danger the hard way, yet clinicians also noticed something else. Radiation could damage living tissue, and tumors were sometimes more vulnerable than the surrounding structures. That created the idea of radiotherapy, which is the careful use of radiation to control or destroy cancer. The early days were crude and risky. Over time, physics and engineering transformed the practice. Beams became more targeted. Doses became calculated. Shielding improved. Treatment planning became a discipline where anatomy and geometry meet. Radiotherapy also changed the experience of cancer care. Many patients could receive treatment without major surgery, and some tumors could be shrunk to make operations possible later. It is a striking example of medicine borrowing from fundamental science. Discoveries in physics did not stay in laboratories. They became clinical tools, shaped into something that can aim at disease with increasing precision. Smoking's link to cancer was proven through painstaking population studies. For a long time, lung cancer rose while explanations drifted. Some blamed pollution. Some blamed bad luck. The truth emerged through epidemiology, which is slow, careful, and often unglamorous. Researchers compared large groups. They tracked who smoked, how much, and for how long. They followed health outcomes over years, then looked for patterns that could not be explained away. The signal was powerful. Heavy smoking was strongly associated with much higher lung cancer risk, and the relationship often strengthened with greater exposure. These findings mattered because they did not rely on a single dramatic case. They relied on numbers that held up across studies and countries. This evidence changed public health messaging, warning labels, and social norms. It also revealed how difficult prevention can be when addiction and industry are involved. The proof was a triumph of method. It showed that you can uncover hidden causes of disease by watching entire populations, even when the cause feels ordinary and socially accepted. The germicidal power of soap changed surgery, childbirth, and kitchens. Soap does not need to kill every microbe to make a huge difference. Its real trick is that it breaks up oils and helps water lift microbes off skin and surfaces so they can be rinsed away. That mechanical power is why washing hands can interrupt transmission so effectively. In surgery, cleaner hands and cleaner skin lowered the chance that bacteria would enter wounds. In childbirth, it reduced the risk of deadly infection passed from caregiver to mother. In homes, it changed food handling and routine hygiene, especially when paired with safe water. Soap also made prevention feel accessible. You did not need a laboratory. You needed a habit and a bar. This helped shift health from something that happens only in hospitals to something shaped by everyday actions. The story is also a reminder that small routines can carry enormous weight. A few seconds at a sink can be the difference between a mild illness and a catastrophe. Soap is humble, but its impact is historic. Smallpox inoculation saved lives centuries before vaccines were understood. Long before anyone could name a virus, communities noticed a strange pattern. People who survived smallpox rarely caught it again. From that clue came variolation, a risky practice that tried to trigger a milder case on purpose. In parts of Asia, dried smallpox material was sometimes blown into the nose. Elsewhere, it was scratched into the skin. The goal was immunity, yet the cost could be severe illness and new outbreaks. Then, the idea traveled. In the Ottoman Empire, the practice impressed visitors from Europe, including Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, who pushed it in England after seeing it used locally. In Boston, a minister and an enslaved man named Onesimus helped bring the method to public attention. It was controversial, frightening, and imperfect. Still, it lowered death rates and proved prevention could be engineered. Midwives carried community knowledge long before obstetrics became a profession. In many villages, the first medical expert a family truly knew was a midwife. She arrived in the hardest hours, when fear was loud and time mattered, and she brought more than comfort. She brought memory. Midwives learned by apprenticeship, by repetition, and by listening to older women who had seen hundreds of births. They understood positioning, pacing, and when to intervene with touch, heat, massage, or simple tools. They also understood the social map. They knew which mother had lost a baby before, who lacked food, and who needed help long after the cord was cut. In some places, they carried knowledge of herbs and practical hygiene, and they passed it on like a living archive. When hospitals and formal training later expanded, midwifery was sometimes pushed aside, then later revalued as outcomes were compared. This history matters because it shows that medicine has long lived in community hands, not only in institutions, and that skill can be built through care repeated across generations. Cesarean sections became safer only after anesthesia, antisepsis, and transfusions. For a long time, a cesarean was an act of desperation. Without reliable pain control, without ways to reduce infection, and without help for catastrophic bleeding, the odds were grim. Safety improved when surgery began to treat the mother as someone who must survive, not as an afterthought. Techniques changed. Surgeons learned better ways to open and close the uterus, and to control bleeding with careful suturing and improved instruments. Hospital teams became more coordinated, so the procedure was not a lone hero with a knife. It was a planned sequence, with monitoring and recovery built in. Blood loss became something that could be corrected rather than accepted. Infection became something that could be prevented and treated. The result was a profound shift in obstetric care. When labor became obstructed, or when a baby was in distress, the choice was no longer only tragedy or luck. The operation became a controlled option, and with that control came the possibility of saving 2 lives, not 1. The first birth control pills reshaped medicine, culture, and personal autonomy. When the first oral contraceptives arrived, they offered something new in human history. They separated sex from pregnancy with a method that was private, portable, and medically managed. The science relied on hormones that can prevent ovulation, turning fertility into something that could be paused and restarted. That medical control changed lives in practical ways. People could plan education, work, and family size with far more certainty. Relationships changed too, because the stakes of intimacy shifted. The pill also exposed a fault line. Access was uneven, and the early formulations could cause side effects that forced hard choices. Debates erupted in courts, churches, and living rooms, since the question was never only medical. It was about who gets to decide what happens inside a body. Over time, doses and options evolved, and conversations about consent and agency grew louder. Whatever someone's personal view, the pill's historical impact is undeniable. It turned reproduction into a question of timing, and timing into a form of freedom. Vaccination campaigns required logistics as much as biology. A vaccine can be brilliant science and still fail in the real world if it cannot reach people safely. Campaigns learned this early. Vials had to be kept at the right temperature. Needles and syringes had to be clean and available. Records had to be accurate so second doses were not missed. Communities needed clear communication, because fear can empty a clinic faster than a shortage of supplies. In remote areas, vaccinators traveled by boat, motorcycle, and foot, carrying coolers like treasure chests. In cities, lines had to move quickly, and schedules had to match working lives. Some programs used strategies like ring vaccination, by contacts around a case are immunized first to choke off spread. Others focused on schools to reach large groups efficiently. Behind every famous victory against a disease is an invisible army of planners, drivers, nurses, and local leaders. Vaccination is science, yes. It is also organization, trust, and timing, because immunity has to arrive before the outbreak does. Early insulin was extracted from animal pancreases in exhausting quantities. Once insulin was identified as the missing key for many patients with diabetes, the next challenge was brutal and practical. How do you make enough of it? Early production relied on pancreases collected from slaughterhouses, cleaned and ground, then processed through painstaking steps to separate insulin from the rest of the tissue. Each batch demanded care, because impurities could cause reactions and inconsistent dosing could be dangerous. Supplies were precious, and the work was relentless. This was not yet a world of sleek biotechnology. It was a world of glassware, cold rooms, filtration, and constant testing. Even with those limits, the impact was staggering. Patients who had been fading could stabilize when insulin became available in reliable amounts. The push to scale production also changed pharmaceutical manufacturing itself. Companies learned to standardize potency, to purify proteins, and to distribute a life-saving hormone widely. The story is a reminder that discovery is only the first step. A cure that cannot be made is only an idea. Insulin became real when industry learned how to bottle it. The first antivirals showed viruses could be targeted, not just endured. For much of history, viral illness felt like weather. It arrived, it passed, and doctors could only support the body while it fought. Antiviral drugs changed that assumption by proving you could interfere with a virus directly. The earliest successes were often narrow, aimed at specific infections where the virus relies on a particular enzyme or replication step. Some early treatments were used for severe herpes infections, including infections of the eye, where preventing damage matters urgently. The excitement was not only the patient improving, it was the concept. Viruses are not bacteria, and antibiotics do not touch them. So medicine needed a different playbook. Antivirals began to build that playbook. They also introduced new challenges, because viruses can mutate quickly and become resistant when a single drug is used alone. That pushed researchers toward combination approaches and careful dosing. The deeper shift was philosophical. A virus was no longer only something you waited out. It became something you could study as a mechanism, then disrupt with design. That opened the door to modern antiviral medicine, and it changed what untreatable could mean. Modern trauma care grew from war, ambulances, and rapid triage. Trauma medicine is built around one ruthless truth. The body can tolerate injury only for so long before shock and bleeding take over. Modern trauma systems grew by learning how to move fast with purpose. Triage became a disciplined skill, sorting patients by who needs immediate intervention, not by who is loudest or most visible. Emergency teams learned to secure airways, stop bleeding, stabilize fractures, and prevent hypothermia, often before reaching an operating room. The concept of the golden hour entered public awareness, emphasizing that early minutes can decide long-term survival. Hospitals also reorganized. Trauma centers developed protocols, blood availability, imaging access, and surgical readiness at all hours. Training became standardized, so a clinician in one country could use similar priorities to a clinician in another. This is not only a story of heroism, it is a story of systems. When trauma care works, it looks almost rehearsed. That choreography turns catastrophe into something survivable, and it turns random outcomes into predictable improvement. Sterile gloves entered surgery after infections exposed bare hands as hazards. There was a time when surgeons operated with bare hands, believing that a quick rinse was enough, and that skill mattered more than cleanliness. Then the evidence became harder to ignore. Hands touch everything, and skin carries microbes even when it looks clean. Gloves began as a practical solution, not a fashion statement. In one famous early story from a major surgical hospital, Gloves were introduced to protect a nurse's irritated skin from harsh antiseptics, and the side effect was striking. Infection rates dropped. The idea spread because it made intuitive sense in a new era of microbial awareness. Gloves also changed behavior. They encouraged surgeons to think of the operating field as something that must be protected from contamination at every step. Later, glove design improved for fit and sensitivity, and sterile packaging made them reliably available. Today, gloves feel obvious, but their arrival marked a turning point. Surgery stopped treating infection as bad luck. It treated it as a preventable breach, often carried by the very hands trying to heal. Fever once guided diagnosis like a compass before lab tests existed. Before blood tests, scans, and cultures, a fever pattern was a clue you could follow. Doctors listened to timing. Did the temperature spike at night? Did it come in waves, with chills that returned on a schedule? Did it fade and then rise again? Those rhythms could suggest different causes, and they helped physicians choose what to watch for next. The feel of the skin mattered. So did the pulse, the thirst, the confusion, and the presence of rash or cough. Fever was not treated as a single number. It was treated as a story unfolding across days. Clinicians kept careful notes because a turning point could signal recovery or collapse. Fever also shaped decisions about isolation when contagion was suspected, even when the agent was unknown. In that sense, fever functioned like an early warning system. It was the body waving a flag that something had changed, and it gave doctors a way to navigate uncertainty with observation and patience. Modern tests can be faster, but the old art of reading fever still echoes in every clinical question that begins with, when did it start? The thermometer made how sick something you could finally quantify. Once temperature could be measured reliably, fever stopped being only a feeling. It became a record. Early thermometers were slow and awkward, yet they introduced a revolution in bedside medicine. Clinicians could chart readings over time and compare one patient's curve to another's. Patterns emerged. Some illnesses tended to climb steadily. Others rose and fell in recognizable rhythms. This allowed doctors to notice deterioration earlier, and it helped them judge whether a treatment was actually changing the course or merely changing appearances. Temperature charts also improved communication. A nurse on the night shift could pass information to the morning team with more precision than descriptions like hot or warm. Over time, thermometers became faster, smaller, and safer, moving from fragile glass instruments to modern digital tools. The central change remains the same. Measurement created a shared language. It made sickness something you could track, not just endure. In a world where so much was uncertain, one dependable number became a quiet anchor, and it helped medicine shift from intuition toward monitoring. Herbal medicine preserved real pharmacology, mixed with folklore and chants. Long before laboratories, people learned by watching what plants did to the body. Some herbs calmed pain. Some eased coughing. Some slowed diarrhea. Others were dangerous, and that danger taught caution through hard experience. Over centuries, healers gathered knowledge like a patchwork map, with local plants, seasonal harvests, and recipes passed through families and apprenticeships. Not all of it was accurate, because stories can travel farther than evidence. Still, hidden inside tradition were real chemical effects that modern science later confirmed and refined. Herbal practice also shaped how people thought about dosage, preparation, and interaction. A tea can behave differently than a tincture. A dried leaf can differ from a fresh one. This world was not only medicine, it was culture, trade, and belief. When modern pharmacology arrived, It did not replace herbal history so much as translate parts of it into a new language. The fascination is that trial, error, and curiosity kept finding true medicines even without microscopes. Aspirin's roots trace back to willow bark used for pain. Imagine a healer offering bark from a tree as relief for aching joints or feverish misery. Willow bark had a reputation for easing pain long before the modern tablet existed. The reason is chemical, since the bark contains compounds related to salicylates that can reduce inflammation and discomfort. Over time, scientists isolated and modified these substances into a more standardized medicine, which allowed dosing to be controlled and effects to be studied. The resulting drug became one of the most widely used medicines in the world. It is taken for headaches, fevers, and chronic inflammatory pain, and it also has an important place in heart care for certain patients because of how it affects blood clotting. The story is powerful because it connects ancient observation to modern chemistry. A tree became a clue. A clue became a molecule. A molecule became a pill that sits in countless cabinets. It is a reminder that nature often offers the first draft, and humans rewrite it into reliability. Digitalis from foxglove taught doctors that plants can steady a failing heart. Foxglove is beautiful and dangerous, which makes it a perfect teacher for medicine. In the 18th century, physicians began to notice that preparations from this plant could reduce swelling and improve symptoms in people with heart failure. The effect comes from compounds that influence how strongly the heart contracts and how it regulates rhythm, which can help when the heart is struggling to pump effectively. Yet the margin between help and harm is narrow. Too much can cause nausea, confusion, and life-threatening arrhythmias. This forced medicine to take dosage seriously in a new way. Digitalis became a lesson in precision and monitoring, not just in killer. It also strengthened the idea that a drug can target a specific organ function, rather than simply balance the humors or broadly soothe. The foxglove story is thrilling because it shows how a garden flower helped shape modern cardiology, and how danger itself pushed doctors toward careful measurement and respect for the body's electrical bar. Fragility. Morphine isolated from opium showed chemistry could refine nature's drugs. Opium had been used for centuries to ease pain and induce sleep, but it was unpredictable. Different batches varied in strength, and dosing could be guesswork with high stakes. When morphine was isolated in the early 19th century, medicine gained a new kind of control. The active component could be measured, standardized, and delivered more precisely. That transformed surgery, trauma care, and the treatment of severe illness. Morphine could quiet suffering that once seemed inevitable. It also introduced a new and complicated problem, because the same pathways that relieve pain can also create dependence and withdrawal. In that way, morphine became both a gift and a warning. It showed what chemical isolation can do, and it showed why power demands caution. The invention of the hypodermic syringe later made morphine even faster acting, which increased both its usefulness and its risks. This story sits at the heart of modern pain medicine. It is where relief became measurable, and where addiction became a medical reality that could not be ignored. The discovery of anesthesia gases depended on public demonstrations and spectacle. In the 19th century, anesthetic gases were not introduced quietly through paperwork. They were introduced through performances. Lecturers and experimenters held public events where people inhaled laughing gas or ether, then stumbled, sang, or fell without feeling pain. These demonstrations were part entertainment and part science, and they made the effects impossible to deny. Surgeons who attended could imagine a new future, one where a patient would not have to be restrained and terrified. The stage led to the operating room. That path is strange, yet it makes sense. A radical idea often needs a dramatic proof before institutions accept it. The spectacle also carried danger because early dosing and purity were inconsistent, and some performers were harmed. Still, those public trials sped up adoption by letting people witness a human body crossing into insensibility and returning intact. The story is fascinating because it shows medicine borrowing from showmanship to change reality. A crowd watched. A surgeon believed. Surgery transformed. The first artificial heart valves turned engineering into living repair. When a heart valve fails, blood moves the wrong way, and the heart must work harder with every beat. For some patients, medicines can only delay decline. Artificial heart valves offered a mechanical solution inside a living body, which was a breathtaking leap. Early designs included ball and cage valves that clicked audibly, a tiny reminder that metal and biology were cooperating. Later, valves improved in shape and flow, and tissue valves from animals or donors provided alternatives that behave more like natural valves. Each option carries trade-offs, including durability and the need for blood thinners in some cases. What matters historically is the conceptual shift. The heart was no longer sacred and untouchable. It became repairable with parts built in workshops and tested like machines. This also demanded new surgical skill and new post-operative care, since a valve must fit precisely and function for decades. Artificial valves changed survival for people with rheumatic damage, congenital problems, and degenerative disease. They made engineering a form of therapy. Blood pressure cuffs helped reveal silent disease that kills quietly. A person can feel perfectly normal while high blood pressure strains arteries day after day. That is why it is often called a silent killer. The cuff changed this by turning pressure into a routine measurement that could be checked in minutes. Clinicians could detect risk before a stroke or heart attack announced it dramatically. This shifted medicine toward prevention, because a diagnosis could be made while there was still time to act with lifestyle changes and medication. The cuff also revealed patterns across populations. Risk rose with age. Stress, diet, and activity mattered. Some communities faced higher rates due to unequal access to healthy food and care. Blood pressure measurement became a bridge between individual medicine and public health, since it linked personal readings to societal trends. It also changed patient experience. A person could watch their number improve as they made changes, which can be motivating and empowering. The fascination is that such a simple tool helped expose a hidden epidemic. It gave medicine a quiet alarm bell that rings before disaster. The first antibiotics created hope, then forced stewardship and restraint. When antibiotics first entered practice, they felt like a doorway into a safer world. Infections that once doomed people began to retreat, and doctors gained confidence that a wound or pneumonia was not automatically fatal. This hope was well-deserved, and it reshaped surgery, childbirth, and everyday life. Yet the success carried a trap. The more antibiotics were used, the more bacteria adapted. Resistance emerged, spread, and sometimes turned routine infections into serious threats again. That forced medicine to mature. Antibiotics could not be treated like harmless conveniences. They had to be protected. Stewardship became a medical responsibility, meaning doctors consider whether antibiotics are truly needed, choose the most appropriate drug, and use the shortest effective course. Hospitals also strengthened infection control, since preventing transmission is as important as prescribing wisely. This story is compelling because it shows medicine learning humility in real time. A miracle arrived, and nature answered with evolution. The outcome depends on human choices, not only on scientific discovery. Vaccines for rabies proved prevention can follow an exposure. Rabies is terrifying because once symptoms begin, survival is rare. The virus travels through nerves toward the brain, and that journey creates a window where intervention can still work. Rabies vaccination after exposure is built around that window. If treatment is given quickly, before the virus reaches the central nervous system, the immune system can be trained in time to stop the infection. This idea was demonstrated dramatically in the 19th century, when Pasteur's team developed a vaccine and used it for people bitten by suspected rabid animals. The approach combined urgency with careful planning, since the vaccine is given in a series of doses and often paired with rabies immune globulin for added immediate protection. The success of post-exposure vaccination changed how medicine thinks about time and disease. Prevention does not always mean before the event. Sometimes it means after the bite, after the accident, after the moment of danger. Rabies made that clear in the starkest way possible. It taught medicine that the immune system can be coached fast enough to outrun a fatal virus. The microscope turned bad air into visible organisms with names. When people blamed disease on miasma, the cause was everywhere and nowhere at once. The air smelled foul, so the air must be guilty. The microscope began to dismantle that idea by showing living organisms where no one expected them, in water, on surfaces, and in bodily fluids. Once microbes could be seen, they could be classified, compared, and eventually linked to specific diseases. Naming matters because it turns a mystery into a target. It also changes behavior. If contamination is carried on hands or instruments, then cleaning becomes purposeful. If microbes spread through droplets, then distance and ventilation matter. The microscope did not solve everything overnight, and early observers could not always connect what they saw to what people suffered. Still, it shifted the imagination of medicine. Illness became something that could be traced to an agent with structure and behavior. The world became more crowded and more knowable. That is an astonishing trade. You gain a new source of fear, but you also gain a new source of power. The idea of triage began as a harsh necessity on battlefields. When wounded soldiers arrived in waves, early military doctors faced choices that felt impossible. If they treated people in the order they appeared, many who could have been saved would die waiting. Triage changed that by making the first question brutally practical. Who will die without immediate help? Who can wait? Who is beyond saving with the tools available? This was not coldness for its own sake. It was an attempt to save the greatest number when time, staff, and supplies were limited. It also forced medicine to become faster at judging danger. Breathing, bleeding, consciousness, and shock became the clues that mattered most. Over time, triage systems developed tags, categories, and protocols that could be taught and repeated. The concept later moved into civilian disasters, car crashes, and emergency rooms. Triage is unsettling because it admits limits, yet it is also hopeful. It turns chaos into a plan, and it gives urgency a shape. Medical licensing grew to protect patients from dangerous imposters. In eras when anyone could claim to be a healer, the public had little defense against charm and false promises. Crack remedies traveled fast, and desperate families were easy targets. Licensing emerged as a way to draw a line between trained practice and confident performance. It created standards for education, apprenticeship, and examinations. It also created consequences for harm, since a license can be revoked. This shift changed medicine's relationship with society. A doctor became accountable to a professional body and to the law, not only to reputation. Licensing also reshaped trust. Patients could assume a basic level of competence, even if outcomes were still uncertain. The system was not always fair. Access to training could be limited by class, race, or gender, and that history matters. Still, the core purpose was protective. Licensing tried to make medical care safer by making expertise visible, verifiable, and enforceable, rather than a costume anyone could wear. The modern hospital evolved from charity refuge into high-tech factory. Early hospitals often focused on shelter, food, and spiritual care more than cure. Over centuries, they transformed into places where diagnosis, treatment, and recovery are coordinated at scale. The change accelerated when surgery became safer and when laboratory testing became routine. Hospitals began to resemble complex machines. Wards were organized by specialty. Operating theaters ran on schedules. Sterilization, imaging, pharmacies, and blood services became internal industries. The modern hospital also created new roles. Respiratory therapists, pharmacists, radiographers, and specialized nurses became essential parts of care. This transformation brought remarkable power, yet it also brought tension. Efficiency can clash with humanity, and patients can feel like they are moving through a system rather than being held by it. Still, the result is extraordinary. A person can arrive in crisis and meet a network of expertise that did not exist in earlier centuries. The hospital became a place where knowledge is concentrated, shared, and applied quickly, which changed what survival can look like. Refrigeration changed medicine by protecting blood, vaccines, and fragile hormones. Many medical materials are alive in a sense. They break down with heat. They lose potency. They spoil. Refrigeration turned that vulnerability into something manageable. Blood could be stored for emergencies instead of relying on last-minute donors. Vaccines could be transported farther without failing on the journey. Hormones and biologic medicines could be kept stable long enough to reach patients who needed them. This may sound like a convenience, yet it is a foundational shift. It created the cold chain, which is a network of storage, transport, and temperature monitoring that makes modern medicine possible in the real world. It also made planning reliable. Clinics could stock supplies. Hospitals could prepare for disasters. Remote areas could receive treatments that once would have degraded before arrival. Refrigeration changed the rhythm of medicine from improvisation to readiness. It is a quiet technology with enormous reach, since it protects not only one patient but entire programs of care. The first public health departments treated cities as patients. A single doctor can treat a cough. A public health department asks why a whole neighborhood is coughing. When cities grew dense, epidemics exposed a new truth. Health is shaped by water, waste, housing, and work conditions. Early public health departments began to track deaths, inspect sanitation, manage outbreaks, and push for safer living environments. They treated the city like a body with systems. Sewers were circulation. Clean water was nutrition. Waste removal was detoxification. This approach made disease prevention a civic project rather than a private struggle. It also introduced conflict, since public health measures can restrict behavior and challenge businesses. Even so, departments built tools that still shape life today, including vaccination coordination, restaurant inspections, and disease surveillance. Their work is often invisible when it succeeds, which can make it easy to forget. Yet the concept is revolutionary. A government can accept responsibility for conditions that influence health, and it can intervene before hospitals fill. Public health departments made prevention a public service, not merely personal luck. Epidemiology began when patterns mattered more than single dramatic cases. A dramatic case can grip attention, yet it can also mislead. Epidemiology shifted medicine toward the long view by asking how illness moves through groups over time. Instead of focusing only on one patient, epidemiologists count many. They compare who got sick and who stayed well. They look for shared exposures, shared places, and shared behaviors. This approach can uncover causes that no individual story reveals because the signal hides in the crowd. It also taught medicine to respect uncertainty. A pattern must be tested against alternatives, and coincidence must be ruled out. Epidemiology became especially powerful in outbreaks, where tracing contacts and timelines can reveal the next likely spread. It also changed chronic disease research, since heart disease and cancer often develop slowly and involve multiple risks. The fascination is that this science turns everyday life into data, then uses that data to save lives. It is medicine learning to think like a mapmaker, drawing lines between people, places, and time. The discovery of anesthesia made dentistry bearable and changed everyday fear. Tooth pain has a special cruelty. It can dominate sleep, appetite, and concentration. For centuries, dental work was fast and terrifying, and many people avoided it until infection forced action. Anesthesia changed that emotional landscape. When pain could be controlled, dental care became something people could plan rather than endure in panic. This opened the door to longer procedures, better restorations, and more careful extractions. It also changed the economics of health. When fear decreased, more people sought routine care, which reduced the cascade of problems that begin with untreated cavities. Dentistry also became a place where local anesthetics, nerve blocks, and precise dosing were refined in everyday practice. The broader impact is psychological. A whole category of dread softened. People began to expect that medicine should not require suffering as proof of seriousness. Dentistry became a vivid example of that expectation. It showed how comfort can increase prevention and how reducing fear can change public behavior. Antibiotics reshaped surgery by making infection a problem, not a sentence. Even when surgeons mastered technique, post-operative infection could still undo everything. Antibiotics shifted the balance by giving teams a way to treat certain bacterial infections before they overwhelmed the body. This made more operations worth attempting, since the risk calculation changed. Surgeons could repair rather than only remove, and they could operate on sicker patients with better odds. Antibiotics also altered recovery. A fever after surgery was no longer always a fatal turning point. It became something that could be investigated, cultured, and treated. This progress came with responsibilities. Surgeons and hospitals had to use antibiotics thoughtfully, since overuse encourages resistant organisms that thrive in surgical settings. Modern surgery now relies on a layered defense that includes sterile technique, careful wound care, and targeted antibiotic use when appropriate. The historical shift is striking. Surgery moved from a gamble against invisible decay to a more controlled discipline where complications can be fought. Antibiotics did not make surgery risk-free. They made it survivable far more often, and that changed what medicine dares to attempt. Genetics turned some family curses into identifiable, testable conditions. Families have always noticed repeating patterns. Early deaths, certain cancers, unexplained weakness, deafness appearing in multiple relatives. Without genetics, these patterns could feel like doom with no name. Genetic science changed that by offering explanations that can be tested, confirmed, and sometimes acted upon. In some cases, a mutation can be identified that explains a risk, which allows earlier screening or preventive choices. In other cases, genetics can end years of uncertainty by giving a child symptoms a diagnosis that fits. This knowledge can be empowering, yet it can also be heavy. People may learn risks they cannot change, or they may face difficult decisions about having children. Genetics also raised new ethical questions about privacy insurance, and discrimination. The fascination is that a story once told as fate can become a pattern in molecules, and a pattern can become a plan. Genetics does not erase chance, but it can replace superstition with clarity, and that clarity can change a family's future. Medicine's history is a long tug-of-war between microbes and minds. On one side are microbes, relentless and adaptive, shaped by evolution and driven by survival. On the other side are human minds, inventive and stubborn, capable of insight, error, and sudden leaps of understanding. This struggle plays out in laboratories and hospitals, but it also plays out in habits and beliefs. A new treatment can be discovered, then misused. A life-saving public health measure can be resisted because of fear or mistrust. A breakthrough can spread quickly when people cooperate, or it can stall when misinformation wins attention. The history of medicine is therefore not only about drugs and devices. It is about decisions. It is about whether societies invest in clean water, whether individuals accept vaccines, whether hospitals enforce hygiene, and whether researchers share data. Microbes exploit gaps. Minds can close them. That is why the story never ends. Each generation inherits old enemies and new tools, and the outcome depends on how wisely those tools are used. The tug-of-war continues, yet the very fact that we can describe it shows how far human understanding has come. As we come to the end of our journey through the history of medicine, you can let the last echoes settle softly. We wandered from ancient hands that dared to treat wounds with what nature offered, to new ideas that reshaped how people understood sickness itself. We traced the rise of careful observation, the slow birth of prevention, and the moments when a single insight changed what survival could mean. Along the way, we met the hidden worlds that microscopes revealed, and the bold tools that let doctors see inside the living body. We felt the turning point when pain could be quieted, and when infection stopped being an inevitable shadow. We watched communities learn to protect themselves with clean water, safer births, and organized care. We saw science meet ethics, as medicine learned that trust is as important as technique. And through it all, you could sense the same thread. People kept trying. They kept learning. They kept finding ways to turn fear into understanding. Now you do not need to hold any of it tightly. Let it drift like pages closing in a calm library. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw unclench. Let your breathing find an easy rhythm that does not need effort. If you enjoyed this sleepy walk through history, you might like, subscribe, or leave a quiet comment. It helps this little corner of the internet reach others who need a slower place to land. And if you're still awake, there will be another video waiting on the screen. You can let it carry you onward, or you can simply rest right here. Sleep well, and good night.